HyperCities is a digital media and learning project sponsored by the MacArthur Foundation. It's a collaborative investigation of the historical layers of city spaces. HyperCities can be found online at www.hypercities.com. HyperCities is essentially a time travel application in which high school students and university students collaborate using social technologies to delve into the past, present, and future of city spaces. They produce a kind of cultural archaeology of the many diverse voices and communities who live and who have lived in these places. HyperCities is literally built from the ground up. It's a collaborative undertaking in which universities, museums, libraries, cultural institutions, nonprofits, and community advocacy groups all contribute content. Everyone can narrate their own history through time and place. To launch HyperCities, the first thing you come to is a map of the world showing the various cities that we're working on: Berlin, Los Angeles, New York, Ollantaytambo, Rome, and Tel Aviv. There's several more cities in the works, as well as collections that are available in various places in the world just by zooming in. Let's start with Los Angeles. When you click on a city, the first thing you see is a series of historical maps overlaid on the present-day satellite imagery of the city. You also have a timeline at the top, which can easily be contracted or expanded to see various areas. You also have a series of collections that are keyed to the area you're looking at in the map, as well as the time frame. These collections are public, external, or private. The private collections can be accessed by just logging in. Let's take a look at the public collections in this view screen. You'll notice there's a publication by Professor Phil Ethington of USC called Ghost Metropolis, a 13,000-year history of Los Angeles, as well as a general collection and several other courses and other collections. As I zoom out of the map, I'll notice more collections come into view. This is because my region has been increased. I'll also notice that there's various kinds of material: historical material, academic content, archival content, as well as community-generated content, all living side by side within the HyperCities platform. Here's a video, for example, of one of the students in historic Filipino town talking about her experience coming to the United States and living in historic Filipino town.
I miss food most. There are a lot of food that are not here, that are in the Philippines, like isaw and dirty ice cream and fish balls on a cart. And
I might take a look at maybe a different time period now. I'm interested, say, in maybe 1920. And perhaps I want to look at one of the collections, let's say the general collection, and just see what's available. 109 objects are available in this particular collection, and they range from videos to photographs, archival text documents, as well as individual maps that users have created. Anyone can overlay these objects and explore. Let's click a couple on just to see. 26. This is the Homer Laughlin building. We have a photograph of the building as well as information about it. I can easily change the transparency of any photograph as well as expand the region. I'll save this photograph for later. Let's go ahead and scoot over to Berlin. When I come to Berlin, the first thing I'm going to notice is that there's also a general collection, in this case keyed to the view screen that I'm looking at, as well as new maps. Let's put the 1772 map of Berlin up, go back to the general collection, and let's put the Berlin Wall up in 1772 just to see what it might look like. I don't see anything immediately until I actually zoom out a little bit. And one of the things that becomes apparent to me is that in 1772 the city was actually pretty small, and the Berlin Wall would have actually not really have even divided the city in half. There's also projects by students here about the Berlin airlift, Leni Riefenstahl, and if I zoom down further, I'll see the range of objects that are available in the general collection. Let's take a look at maybe one of the other collections, in this case the Berlin Castle project. We'll turn all these objects on, and I'll notice a particular form of narration that becomes available to me. I can move easily between the objects just by clicking the next or the previous button. The objects form a kind of narrative, and a user can then move between these objects and find out a little bit about the different objects. This is a photograph of the castle from 1905. Let's keep that one up, and maybe I can change the map to see if we have 1905. $1908, here we go. 1905, with the Berlin Wall up and the castle panorama from that time. All the maps also have metadata associated with them in case a user is curious about where the map came from, who made it, what it shows, and other objects like that. Let's close these objects, and finally we'll go over to Ollantaytambo. Once again, we're going to have a different set of maps, and in this case we actually have a very different community engagement. This is because Ollantaytambo is an area in Peru, part of the Sacred Valley, that is currently undergoing a massive transformation in both architectural and urban senses. The Peru studio took several trips to Ollantaytambo for the purposes of data gathering and mapping. The highlight of their trip was a presentation to COPESCO, a regional government group that develops infrastructural projects in Cusco and throughout the Sacred Valley. The team produced a series of maps, which are shown here, talking about labor, zoning, agriculture, and urban growth. These maps will also be used to protect the town of Ollantaytambo, as well as to make decisions about future growth. The team also produced a series of collections, which they put in the general group, both documenting their own travels, as well as information about the history of the town. All these objects can be easily accessed, and users can mix and match them to learn a little bit about the history of the area and its historical significance.